Hello everybody, thank you for watching my YouTube video on Kubernetes. In this topic is resource quota and limit. By default, a pod will run with unbound CPU and memory limits. This means that any pod in the CPU system will be able to consume as much CPU and memory on the node that executes the pod. You don't want one person or a team taking up all the resources of CPU memory of the cluster. To do this, user applies a quota to the namespace, resource quota and object quota. So resource quota and object quota. So resource quota is mainly consists of like CPU, memory, storage, okay, and there's also an service object quota. The object quota is like mainly like config maps, etc. So config map, resource quota, service load balancer node, etc. Okay, these are the things. Quota is nothing but it lets you a user to set a hard limit on the total number of or total amount of nodes of resources by any CPU, memory, and the API resources, pods, services, etc. that namespace may consume. Once your quota is applied to the namespace, the system will restrict any creation on the namespace. Like example, like whatever if you said we want two CPU or two memory, 2 GB of memory, then you cannot cross more than that. Okay, so you can also specify this limit during the pod configuration file also. When you have the pod file, when you have the gamble file, when you create during the point of creation, you can specify how much memory you want, how much CPU you want, and that you can restrict on the pod level as well. And the resource types have a base unit. So a CPU specified its units are mainly in cores. Okay, so and memory is specified in bytes. Okay, so in the resource quota, if you see like a memory, you have 200 M. So 200 M and is normally called as 200 millicore. Okay, so 200 M is equal to zero point 0.2, which is 20% of your CPU core of the running node. If the node has two cores, then still it has 20% of a single core. And you can also put a limit for memory, which is, for example, like a memory of 400 M. Normally, you can specify the memory quota on MIB or GIB. Okay, there are two types of constraints normally: request and limit. Okay, so request consists of a guaranteed CPU resource. Okay, which is well, what will happen is that is a request is the amount of a resource that the system will guarantee for the container, and Kubernetes will use the value to decide on which node to place the pod. Limit is nothing but the maximum amount of resource that Kubernetes will allow the container to use. So assume like if I have an CPU limit request is about 100 MB, the Kubernetes will guarantee that it will want 100 millicore, it will definitely will give. Whereas if you request for limit to crosses more than that, if you want to set a limit of 200 M, Kubernetes will try to throttle, will try to push, but it cannot guarantee. Okay, so that is where the main concern on the request and the limit. So we can specify the namespace on the namespace level where how much is normal CPU, how much request you want, how much guaranteed, and how much you can limit, means throttle you can specify when you're creating it on the namespace. When you launch the pod, I will show you now the sample templates, like when you create a resource quota, how much you can specify config maps and secrets. Let's have the demo, then you will be able to understand. Okay, so the first thing is that is let's create a namespace. I'm going to create a namespace for CPU. Then we'll go for memory. So okay, so I've created an thing. Let's describe kubectl. Describe. So namespace equal to quota and CPU example. Okay, currently there is no resource quota, no limits, which means there is no quota available at the moment. Now let's create a template. I've created a template. So guaranteed is one CPU, guaranteed is 1 gigabyte of memory. Okay, the limit it can go. up to maximum or 2 CPU and 2 GB. Okay, now let's create it. Okay, so it is creating now, successfully created. Okay, so you can see hard limit is up to 2 GB, and it's guaranteed is like you will get around okay, the requesting CPU size is around 1 GB. Request is maximum guaranteed resources 1 CPU, and 1 GB of memory is guaranteed. Limit is maximum, this throttle is around 2 CPU and 2 GB memory. Okay, now let's create a pod. I'm going to create a pod. Okay, guaranteed it one definitely around a 600 MIB and 400 millicore. Now let's create it. Okay, the pod first pod is successfully will be created because it is within our limit. Okay, so what happened? It's you started using. So what we have said, maximum limit is 800 millicore, and guaranteed you will get 400 millicore. Now let's create then one more system, one more pod. In that pod, what I'm going to do is that is the limit is the memory is 1 GB, and CPU is 800, but we are requesting guaranteed is 700 MB. Do we have a space there? Let's see. Okay, so maximum I can go is 1, but I'm requesting is 700 to 100 MB more, 100 millicore more. So do you think it will create? Let's see. Yeah. So the reason error behind this that is we are requesting the hard limit. We are above the hard limit, which is not possible. So that is why it is blocking or stopping the provisioning. So that is where the quota plays a vital role. Now let's create for memory one. So we will create for a limit range on the memory. Let's create a namespace. I'm sorry. Okay, now we will create now the namespace is created. Now let's give ctl. So there is no quota and limits at the moment. Now let's create it. So what I'm currently doing is that is I'm creating a maximum limit and minimum limit. Okay, so what I'm right now doing is that is I'm creating for testing for memory. Okay, so the resource limit I'm talking about is memory request. So request type is memory. Here I'm requesting about 500 MIB. Maximum I can go for is 1 GB. Okay, so let's create the pod. So first pod which I'm going to create is memory is like a default first pod I'm creating, which is 800 MIB, and the request is guaranteed 600 MIB. Okay, let's create that. Yeah, so we can see it's already been restricted. So we now what we are going to do now is that is we are going to create an pod. In the pod we are having a value of 1 GB, and the limit is 1 GB, and the request is 800 MB. So currently minimum is 500 MI and max is 1 GB. So let's create this and see what is happening on. Yeah, so you can see it is forbidden because The maximum memory usage per the container is only 1 GB, but the limit is 1. It is basically 1.5 MIB. It is 1.536 MIB. Okay, so this is will not be possible. So quota will help us to quotas and limits, mainly quotas, resource quotas and limits will help us to avoid the maximum usage of CPU and memory, and we can restrict them. And at the same time, we can allocate them for the, but we can do for testing, and you can segregate for each individual. For example, your production and QA, we can segregate them, and and we can optimize the resource utilization. Thanking you all. So in the next video, we will talk about horizontal pod autoscaler.